Jai Shri Krishna, Namaste, and welcome to Chitti Media's Current Affairs Show. Today, I'll be talking with our very esteemed guest, our in-house Panditji, Pandit Satish Sharma ji. Panditji, welcome.
Pranam ji, Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Krishna, Sloni ji. Lovely to be with you today.
And to you too. There is so much to cover today's show. So basically, you've had a few trips to Leicester recently that has seemed to have settled down somewhat, but there are still some underlying tones that need to be ironed out. Can you give us the latest on that, please?
Yes, the hostility and the rank hatred that sort of flooded through Leicester, that seems to have subsided. It's almost as though a tide of anti-Hindu sentiment and violence against Hindus washed into Leicester. And now that that tide has gone out, people are looking at the debris, they're looking at what's been considering what damage has been done and what work now has to be done to patch things up again. But more importantly, I get a sense that the community is not willing to go back to the status quo as it was. There are a lot of small bubbling things under the surface. And there is now a need that the community, I think, is expressing to start to consider, why is it that this happened? Why this sudden conflagration appeared? You know, so the community is reflecting. It's conducting reviews. Here at Chitti Media, you'll be covering a few of those, I know, so thank you for that. And we're having an online public inquiry on Sunday, the 2nd of October at hinducampaigns.com. And so people will be able to join that as well. So there's a lot of scrutiny now. And it's interesting that one of the things I noticed is that we still have a very repressed atmosphere. It's almost as though in the past, the Garba preparations, the functions, the gatherings in the halls, they would be ebullient and they would be full of energy and light. But instead of 1,000 people coming, there are a few hundred people coming for training and for practice and everything else. I had a chat with somebody only this morning who's in Leicester, and she was kind enough to share with me that she'd been to their local community hall, and there were only 15 people there. Oh. And so there is still that, shall we say, unease, and that has to be dispelled. And that's going to take a lot of effort. I can't see how that unease will disappear when you consider the almost feral hatred that we saw on the faces and in the mouths of many of those boys who were attacking the Hindus. Yes. There was it was almost as though they had forgotten that we're human beings. That, you know, that sense of disconnectedness from another human being, that has been revealed now. We saw it in Leicester. We saw it in Smethwick outside that temple, where those elderly people were just inside shell-shocked. But why they were being targeted with so much hatred. Yes. So that will take a long time to heal. But there is a degree of settlement. There is a degree of peace returning, even though most people are still a bit dazed. A lot of work to be done there in Leicester and also in Smethwick. And our community leaders, which is a strange term. I think we're even going to scrutinize, what does that mean, community leader? You know, we've had many speeches that have been made by people who ostensibly occupy the position, many of them unelected, of community leader. But in this day and age, it's not enough just to be in charge of a small temple and perhaps know scripture, and then feel that you have the authority and the ability to be able to step forward into such a toxic situation and start to speak in a manner which hopefully is intended to move the whole conversation forward. And so even this notion of community leaders, we're going to have to give it some attention and scrutinize it. Yes, but on the whole, things are moving in the right direction.
Yes, because many other religious institutes, their community leaders are also very politically engaged. And that's something that's very much lacking in the Hindu temples. They're not politically aware of what's happening, the undertones of the responsibility that they've got. It's more than just dealing with the temple. It is society in general and fitting in with the British society and of all the animosity that's now being targeted towards Hindus. There's a lot of Hindu hatred going on around. We're seeing it from various directions. So yeah, you make a really valid point, Banditji. Community leaders have a lot more responsibility than they believe they have.
I think you're absolutely right in that, and it's a sign of the times, Zoology. As a community, we instinctively are a collaborative civilization. You know, wherever we go, we seek to work with people and with systems for the benefit of everybody. You know, Vasudeva Kutumbakam is commonly touted, and Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. You know, may we have good things for everybody. So these are our civilizational epithets. They're the foundational statements for our civilization. But how do you then adjust to an environment which is, one, hostile, and so hostile as to be toxic, and secondly, where you're dealing with people whose intention is not to be collaborative?
Yes.
These are the questions that those who lead our communities are now going to ask. And from one perspective, although there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of hatred, and many police officers were unbelievably very regretful, were injured, and many members of our community were also injured. Fortunately, there were no fatalities. Had there been any fatalities, then I think we'd be in a totally different world and we would be in a totally different situation. But the situation as it now seems to be moving forward, we have been given a window of opportunity. We've been given a window of opportunity to genuinely and with a critical eye scrutinize every aspect of our life in these countries. We need to recognize that we do need to protect ourselves.
Yes.
We do need to be aware of who it is whose interests do not lie with us. And in fact, even those persons where our shall we say, suffering actually serves their interests.
Yeah.
We need to be able to identify these groups and work out how to engage with them. And one of the things I would say, though, and I'm sure you've picked this up, is that we now have a great opportunity to scrutinize the manner in which the background indigenous systems, civilizations, sectors have actually responded to this. So we have seen unbelievably unpleasant commentary in so many newspapers. It's remarkable. There have been times when we have tried to get a story into the mainstream, into the BBC, into the Guardian, and they give us such a high bar. Oh no, we have to have balance, we have to have evidence, etc., etc., etc. And yet when you look at the many of the reports that have come out, and you look at the bar that has been applied, there is no evidence for probably 80 to 90% of the Hindu-phobic content that was pushed through the mainstream media. And so we need to scrutinize this, and let's hold them to account. So that's a good thing that has emerged. I think many more people are now going to think, many more people from the British population are now going to think, hang on a moment, what's going on here? On the one hand, we have all of these terrible news reports of RSS, BJP, fascism, Hindutva, Modi, and everything else. And on the other hand, we don't have any evidence of it. In fact, in the United Nations, there have been so many nations who have complimented Prime Minister Modi, the BJP, and thanked them on the floor of the General Assembly for the support that they got during COVID times and things like this. And that's a cognitive dissonance which is now, becoming apparent. So many more questions, lots of answers coming up, but we do need to keep engaged with this issue. What we mustn't do is settle back into a comfortable apathy and allow it to continue, because if we do that, the opportunities and lessons that can be learned now will be lost to us. And not only will they be lost, we will be subjected to such hatred again in the future, and it may be that next time it's a lot worse.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you've covered so much in that, but you mentioned the Guardian. I was actually at the protest a couple of hours ago.
Well done.
There's today, yes, a peaceful protest by Hindus who are protesting against the Guardian's anti-Hindu rhetoric. It's constantly churning out. They are portraying Hindus as neo-Nazis, as fascists, as right-wingers. It's just completely fake news and propaganda that's so anti-Hindu. And it was a wonderful turnout. It's a weekday. Some of us took some time off work to attend the protest. I would say it was probably 40, 50 people, all there, placards, peacefully protesting, engaging with passers-by. I was even engaging with the photographer from the Telegraph, and he said, but Hindus are normally peaceful. I said, we are peaceful. We're being portrayed as not being peaceful. But as you know, like the Buddhists in Minabar, also peaceful. But we will have to stand up and at least try and stand up and speak up for ourselves if we are being constantly oppressed. And we don't need people like The Guardian and the BBC and the rest of them to keep causing division, hatred with their skewed fake news.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a wonderful protest that we had today. And I feel it's going to be the first of many to come, because Hindus have finally realized that to make a difference in their society, they can't be quiet in their own little bubble, in their own little material bubble most of the time. They need to be out there and vocal, because at the end, they're bringing children up in this society. So if it's not for themselves, it's for a peaceful future for their children.
Solange, I have to compliment you on attending the Guardian protest, and best of luck with the subsequent protests. This is what we need, and I know many will watch you, hear you, and follow your example in subsequent protests. So well done.
Thank you. It's our dharmic duty. We must all do something. You know, we can all be keyboard warriors. In the group of the organizers of the protest, there were 160 people. So you know, had they all turned out, it would have been even more impactful. But I believe even what we did achieve today really has, you know, rippled the waters.
Well, the Guardian has a reputation which is not enviable, shall we say. The Guardian established its wealth on slavery, on colonization. It established its wealth on, it actually supported the Confederates in the Civil War. And so it has a deep-rooted colonial orientation, not to be proud of. And so it really does, I think, need to reflect. I think what we will see over the next few weeks and months is that the British Hindu community will be holding a mirror to these organizations and requiring them to take a good, long, hard look at the reality of who they are and what they have become. Because they are no longer sources of inspiration for a community. They have become peddlers of divide and rule political statements and propaganda. And that's a terrible thing for mainstream publications to be. So I think that we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, we're certainly getting there. And it was wonderful to see so many Hindus united, coming out and recognizing people from the various social media and putting face to names and being out there, being active. And there were people from all different age groups, and it was wonderful, and all different parts of India. You know, we were all uniting under the one umbrella, Hindus, you know, and that is how it should be always.
Well, allow me to be the first to make a declaration on Chitti Media's platform. I have more than just a suspicion. I have a very strong feeling that Hindus are going to rediscover Satyagraha, the means of peaceful protest. There are so many avenues available whereby we can express our position, our opinion, and demand accountability. And so I would like to think that Satyagraha 2023, that will be the year when Hindus come out in huge numbers. They start to exercise their economic might, start to gain political might, and genuinely in the service of all of our communities. So Satyagraha 2023, you heard it here first, and we will be running some campaigns with the hinducampaigns.com team, specifically with regard to The Guardian and specifically with regard to the BBC. We have a wonderful team of youngsters, and they're coming up with some very imaginative ideas on what we should be doing there. So watch this space.
Fantastic. Honestly, there's so much to look forward to as the Hindu community are uniting more and realizing you have to be vocal. You know, standing at the back of the queue while others are pushing in front hasn't worked. It doesn't work. You have to be out there as well, you know, making your own stance, creating your own space. So we're getting there. I'm really proud to see what we achieved this morning.
You know, it's the way I see it now is we are the preservers, we're the inheritors of the principles of Satyug. We carry within us how human beings can exist together to create Satyug.
Yes.
And all we have lost in the last 2 yugas is actually the capacity to defend that to some degree. And we have fought to defend these principles. And I think what we'll see now is the projection of these principles in peaceful protest. And as I'm sure you have felt this morning, there is actually an anand to be experienced in Satyagraha.
Yes.
You know, Anand is not just something that you experience when you're sitting quietly in the depths of meditation or in the depths of doing your japa or your puja.
Yeah.
There is also an Anand in peaceful dharmic protest. So I would encourage everybody to start peaceful protest as a sadhana, and that will bring you closer to Satchit Anand also.
Absolutely, that's very well said. As I had left the protest, I felt that I had achieved so much that morning. I felt an inner peace, a soul fulfilling purpose. We all live and we just exist and we work and we eat and we sleep and look after our families. But what do you actually do with your life? Are you doing anything purposeful? Are you doing anything dharmic? Are you leaving a legacy? If none of those, just at least come to a protest, support your Hindu brothers and sisters, anything for Dharma, stand up for Dharma in any way
Yeah.
you can, be it silently, be it vocally, but just stand up for it.
Well, Om Tat Sat, I believe, is the way to conclude that little statement. So wonderful.
Thank you, Panditji. And yeah, it was my dharmic duty to go. Also, recently, there's been some very high profile news coming out of India about a group called the PFI being
Oh,
banned.
yes.
Can you fill us in about that? Because I live in the UK. I don't know too much about the PFI. So can you tell other viewers that might also not be so clued up on this?
Yes, there is a lot of news there. And it's an organization that a few of us have been monitoring and watching with concern for many years. And a lot of, shall we say, bad blood has flown towards the BJP for their inactivity. There has been a lot of criticism that this group is clearly sponsoring terrorists. This group has got established links with organizations, with the ISI, the Pakistani ISI, with Turkish secret services, etc., etc. This has been in the common sort of space for a while. And there has been criticism leveled at the BJP government for not acting. But I think this is where the criticism has been proven to be unfounded. When an organization which is as deeply embedded and as intertwined into the life of a community or of a state, when it has to be addressed, you need to be able to address it so that you can manage the vacuum. It's all very well jumping in and winning the war, but you have to also win the peace that follows. And so I think all compliments are due to the BJP for handling this in the manner that they have done. If you watch the execution, it's crystal clear that many people were prepared. This is a wonderfully coordinated operation. Huge numbers of people have been collected on the basis of sound evidence and arrested, and slowly the process of evidence gathering that then follows, that will be undertaken. But the PFI has been, it's been a bit of an anomaly in the Bharatiya scene. Remember, we're dealing with a secular democracy. Okay? Now, a secular democracy on paper is actually a very tolerant structure. It's a means of governance which allows a huge latitude for people to express their views. But what happens when one of those views is neither secular nor democratic, but then becomes a danger to secularity and democracy? When it becomes a danger to the majority of the people, when it becomes a danger to indeed the mechanisms and institutions of the state, then how far does one tolerate something which is so intolerant? It's the classic conundrum. And so every government will pick a moment when it can actually not only deal with those who have become so hostile and so dangerously intolerant, but to do it in a manner where you can actually then capture the fallout that will undoubtedly ensue. So it's a wonderful start. It's a banned organization. At this moment, the elements that made up the PFI, many have fled, many are fleeing and are being pursued by the security services. And the hope is that Kerala, where their presence was beginning to become unbelievably violent, the people, the normal day-to-day lives of people in Kerala will start to have some sort of semblance of a little bit of tranquility and a little bit of peace and safety starting to return. So it's great news, and all credit to the BJP and Prime Minister Modi's government for having dealt with this organization. I think the vast majority of observers, including governments overseas, including Muslim governments as well, Islamic governments, are expressing an appreciation for what has happened. And so it's a contribution towards the safety of all of us. So we should applaud it, and hopefully we will see it concluded with all of the roots extracted, so nothing is left vestigial which can resurface to cause harm at a later date. So that's the hopefully the last few closing chapters of the PFI in Bharat.
Thank you so much for filling us in, Panditji, with all of these latest newses, and I look forward to our very next chat soon. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure as always. Best wishes and good luck with all of your protests, Saloniji. Stay safe. All right. And Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Shri
Krishna. Jai Shri Ram. Thank you.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.